When we first got together, she told me she was a woman with principles and wouldn't do anything inappropriate before marriage. Not only did I understand, but I felt fortunate. In this fast-paced age of superficial love, meeting a girl like her seemed like a blessing. But on the eve of our wedding, I found her abortion report. Ding! Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. I had been dating Sophia for 5 years, and we were on the verge of getting married. However, just a week before our wedding was supposed to take place, I discovered her abortion clinic report. I am certain that I never have sexual experiences with her in these 5 years, because she always said that if a woman gives her virginity too easily to a man, she will not be cherished. She wanted to save her most precious first time for our wedding night. I realized then I was the fool for believing her. On the day of the wedding, I didn't show up, and she descended into a state of panic. One day while doing laundry, I took out a folded piece of paper from Sophia's coat pocket. I tenderly murmured, "Always so careless," not bothering to check pockets before throwing the clothes in for a wash. I was about to casually place the paper on the windowsill. Suddenly, I noticed words like Sophia and report on the paper. My heart gave a sharp jolt. Could something be wrong with her health? Frantically, I unfolded the paper, only to be struck dumb with shock. This report was actually Sophia's abortion clinic record. Looking at the date, it was from the 7th of the last month. I clearly remember on the 7th of the last month, Sophia told me she was going on a trip and would probably not return till the end of the month. I wanted to take leave and accompany her, but she firmly refused, saying she was about to get married and wished to have a solo journey before becoming a wife. Coincidentally, in the same period, David, the sales manager of our company's first team, had also taken leave. I spoiled and loved her, without even asking where she was going or with whom. I readily agreed and even gave her a substantial amount for her travel expenses. Looking back now, I'm certain she must have gone for an abortion last month. I'm confident that the baby Sophia aborted wasn't mine, for we hardly ever even held hands or embraced, let alone go any further. When we first started dating, she said she was a woman of principle and would not engage in any inappropriate actions with me before marriage. Not only did I understand, I felt fortunate. In this era of fast love, meeting someone like her was truly a blessing. Thinking back at all these, it turns out I was the fool who was deceived all along. Sitting on the couch, chain-smoking one cigarette after another, the red wine in my glass is also unknowingly emptied. Waiting for her till the middle of the night after her party. Once home, she asked in confusion, "Why aren't you in bed yet? Didn't I tell you not to wait up for me?" she said, scrunching her eyebrows and pinching her nose. I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled out the last cigarette from the packet, put it in my mouth and lit it slowly. "Kevin, stop smoking." Sophia stepped forward and snatched the cigarette from my mouth, crushing it in an ashtray. "Why did you start smoking again? You promised me that you would quit. How many times do I need to tell you that secondhand smoke is very harmful? Do you want me to inhale secondhand smoke after we get married? I really can't stand the smell of smoke." This puff I took was hefty. The nicotine rush hit straight to my head, and a wave of dizziness washed over me. I looked at the delicate face of Sophia. I couldn't help but sigh how this beautiful face used to attract me so much. But look at what has happened now. Look at you now, drinking heavily by yourself. What kind of man are you? Is something troubling you? Whenever I was feeling down, she never comforted me. Instead, she would scold me. In her words, she was doing this to motivate me. She did not want her man to be like a waste, losing his temper helplessly whenever he faced an issue. I used to believe in her words without a doubt, but now all I have is derision. Seeing that I remained silent, she grew angry. "What has got into you? Or are you upset about something at work? Look at you now, you're nothing like a man. How many times have I reminded you? Your mood indirectly affects my mood. I am your girlfriend, not your emotional punching bag." Her attitude towards me has always been this way. She would only give me a smile when I do something satisfactory to her. As long as it's a requirement proposed by her, I must unconditionally agree. If I can't agree, she gets angry. Every time, the one who compromises is me, and this has been the unchanging theorem for 5 years. What's wrong with you? What does staying silent mean? If you continue to be like this, I think we might as well call off the wedding next week. I rubbed my cheeks forcefully and said, our company's profits are 40% lower than last year. I'm worried about this, considering whether or not to lay off employees and introduce some new things to expand the market. After careful calculation, I found that the problem lies with Team 1. Hearing this, Sophia's facial expression somewhat improved. Is it all because of this? There's no need to rush on this matter. Haven't we just hired David? He is extraordinarily quick-witted, and I believe that our sales will definitely rise in the second half of the year. He'll definitely be a lucky charm for our company, rest assured. As for issues about layoffs and market expansion, you can discuss them more with him. Perhaps David isn't yet familiar with the domestic market conditions. Give him some time, and I'm sure he will be able to turn the tide. If we really do have to lay off employees, David would be the first to go. He just has a background in architectural engineering. He doesn't have any sales experience at all. I bit my lip lightly and didn't reply. David is Sophia's ex-boyfriend, who had just returned from abroad. The two had broken up peacefully without causing a fuss, considering each other as siblings thereafter. What's ridiculous is that David, originally an architecture graduate, has next to zero experience in the sales industry. Despite this, Sophia personally decided to appoint David as the manager of a sales department. Ever since he took office, he has not contributed any significant performance, just idling his days away. As a result, many employees came to complain to me about David. But out of respect for Sophia, I still kept him on. In fact, the downturn in the company's performance is directly connected to him. The sales team 1, which was originally the strongest sales team in the company, contributing to over 30% of the company's total sales each year. Ever since David became the manager, the performance of the first team has been on a straight decline. I spoil Sophia. I have always complied unconditionally with her requests because I love her too much. Even so, what I got in the end is betrayal. I am lucky. By sheer luck, the heavens allowed me to see that abortion report. Otherwise, I would have unknowingly married Sophia next week. And this disgrace would accompany me for the rest of my life. It took me a long time before I responded. I hope so. It's getting late. Let's go to bed. Having said that, I went straight back to the bedroom. Sophia followed me, plunging directly onto me. From her, I smelled a peculiar odor. I felt like I had smelled this scent somewhere before, but I couldn't recall it for a while. Looking into Sophia's eyes, I surprisingly noticed a trace of guilt and unease. Honey, considering you're not in a good mood today, let me reward you. But right at that moment, I suddenly remembered where I had smelled that scent before. Yes, this distinctive scent was exactly what her ex-boyfriend David used to smell like. Working together every day, there's no way I could mistake it. Upon realization, I distanced myself from her and mumbled with some hurry and confusion. I'll call it a day today. I'm a bit tired and would like to get some rest earlier. She adjusted her hair, nodded, and said, my girlfriends invited me out for the second half of the evening. I can't really decline. After all, I'm about to get married. I should have some fun before the big day. You should go rest. Don't wait for me before you sleep. Having said that, Sophia began to change her clothes in the bedroom. She took off her stockings that clung to her legs, revealing her pure white thighs. Looking closely at her inner thighs, there were still traces of handprints. Soon, she had changed into a spaghetti strap dress, thin high heels with shiny black and dark red bottoms. She had also lightly touched up her makeup, looking quite enticing. Whenever she accompanied me out, she never bothered to dress up, citing it to be too troublesome, something she despised. Now it appears she wasn't unable to handle the bother. Rather, she was not willing to do so for my sake. I took hold of her hand. It's late today. Maybe you should not go. I'm a bit worried about your safety. Besides, I'm not in a good mood. Perhaps you can consider staying home to keep me company? Let's enjoy a glass of red wine to unwind." She spoke with a hint of impatience. "I'm a grown woman. What's there to worry about? No way. You can't go back on your word after agreeing to something. We aren't married yet. I'm still a free person. You're obstructing me now. What about after we get married? Will I have any personal freedom left? After we get married, I'll have lots of time to spend with you. Plus, I hate going back on my word." I sneered inwardly, thinking how often has she broken her promises? Those earnest vows she once declared to me, aren't they now a grand joke? Despite my desperate pleas, she still left. After she left, a strange smell lingered on the bed. Finally, my gaze landed on a pair of stockings that Sophia had just taken off. I picked up the stockings. The strange smell was stronger here. It was a fragrance all too familiar to any man. Unfolding the stockings, I understood the source of the odor. A stain resembling an eye stared back at me from the fabric, as if mocking me. Frowning, I tossed the stockings into the trash can. Upon my arrival to the restroom, I frantically rubbed my hands together, feeling like no matter how hard I scrubbed, they just wouldn't come clean. Looking at myself in the mirror, burdened by the dark circles under my eyes from constantly working at the company during the day and prepping for my wedding at night, I fell into a river of nostalgia. I've been with Sophia for too long. From our junior year in college till now, we've been profoundly in love for 5 years. In the early stages of our relationship, she truly loved me. The days spent together were sweet. Both of us didn't come from wealthy families. But regardless, we made a pact to visit significant places every vacation, leaving our mark. That beautiful city holds our beautiful history. Nearly every picturesque spot beholds our footprints. Such days carried on until we graduated. I majored in marketing and she studied financial accounting. In the beginning, we were just regular white-collar interns. I worked for a store car sales company, and she was an accountant at a factory. We only came to realize after graduation that the cost of living outside school is vastly different from within. Despite having a salary each month, we still lived frugally. Especially for her, who didn't study hard during college and thus faced relentless barriers after entering the workforce. To provide her with a good working environment and better life, against my family's advice, I took out a loan and started a sales company. I led the sales team while she operated the company. Because of this, I ended up having a big argument with my father. He claimed his objection wasn't towards me starting a business, but because I lacked social experience. He suggested gaining professional experience first before starting a business. Fulfilling his prediction, once the company was up and running, I met obstacles at every corner. I finally realized how impulsive I was. Starting a business isn't as easy as simply talking about it. During that time, I was constantly learning how to manage a company and sleeping only 4 hours a day. Those days were immensely tough in retrospect. Even when I was at my wit's end, Sophia still continued to discourage me, persuading me to close the company and focus on a steady job. But at that time, I already owed the bank $1 million in debts. How could I simply back out? I loved her, suffering in silence and bearing all this alone. Fortunately, I managed to make it through. The company gradually got on the right track. With my debt reduced, my standard of living rose by a notch. Life was gradually getting better until last year when Sophia's ex-boyfriend, David, showed up and broke our peaceful days. Once when she got drunk, Sophia had confessed that he was still in her heart. I dismissed it as drunken ramblings, but it turned out to be a truth she let slip. After David returned to the country, Sophia's attitude towards me underwent an earth-shaking change. From the initial thoughtfulness, it became so much that she wasn't even willing to exchange a word with me. At the company, she is always hanging out with him, laughing and joking. Whenever I ask, she would argue defiantly, "We are just ordinary colleagues. Can't we chat together when we're tired from work? According to you, can't male and female coworkers talk to each other?" I was left speechless. On Facebook, I always liked sharing my life with her, and initially, she would share with me as well. But gradually, this became a one-sided exchange from my end, She was always stingy with her words for me. So much so that, in the end, she'd only respond to the last sentence of my messages, ignoring everything else. Memories of our relationship, from its flourishing to its decline, scrolled through my mind like a slideshow, and I gradually drifted to sleep. 3 in the morning, the ringing of my phone pulls me from my slumber. Still groggy from sleep, I squint at the screen and find that it's a call from Sophia's college best friend and roommate. "Hello, is this Kevin? Can you come and see what's going on? Sophia got really drunk today. We didn't know what upset her and we dared not to stop her. Whoever tries to stop her, she threatens them with a beer bottle." Hearing intently, I can still make out Sophia's voice from the other side of the call. "Yes, I've reached the age of marriage, and I'm getting married next week. But I'm really unhappy. I feel I'm not marrying the man I love. It's more painful than death." After hanging up the phone, I take a deep breath, put on some clothes, and step out of my room. Upon arriving at the bar, I slip into a corner to stay unnoticed instead of heading straight towards her. In the dimly lit bar, Sophia stands amidst the chaos, letting loose completely, a bottle of beer in her hand. The serious demeanor she used to insist on is nowhere to be seen. Her dress, her movements, her overall air, it's as if she has become one of the cabaret girls. It's the first time I've seen her in this state. Whenever I wanted to bring her to a place like this for a night out, she always refused. She said she doesn't like the noise, much less such a mixed crowd. The atmosphere, she said, bothered her. Her demure, sweet girl image collapsed suddenly in my mind. I stare at her as she swings her body with abandon, like Michael Jackson in his prime. Feelings of familiarity mingled with a sudden strangeness surge in my heart. Just how much has this woman lied to me? Sophia scoops up the seated David from the booth, pressing her body against his with forced intimacy. He cooperatively scoops her up in response. Quite affectionately, they began to share drinks from the same cup. The crowd at the bar keeps encouraging them. "Hooray! Whose wife and whose husband are these? Congratulations, young man, you've successfully picked up a girl tonight. The day is breaking soon. Quickly go and do what you're supposed to. Ha 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 ha. Look, this is your kind of wife, the sort that will stick to you once she has had too many drinks." As the song ends, David puts a cigarette between his lips. I thought Sophia would stop him, especially since she has told me more than once she detests secondhand smoking. Unexpectedly, she grabs the lighter from David's hand and lights it up for him. David takes a puff from the cigarette, and Sophia initiates a kiss. She was no longer the woman who hated secondhand smoke. Their behavior once again ignites the whole bar. Sophia's best friend notices me in the corner. She turns off the speakers in a hurry and starts whispering something in Sophia's ear. Yet due to the loud music that was just playing, their sudden whispers make it hard for one to hear. Feeling helpless, her best friend could only raise her voice by a few decibels. "Sophia, stop making a fuss. Let's end it here today. Your fiancé came to pick you up. Go home quietly. You're about to get married. You should behave more prudently." Upon hearing these words, David inevitably turned his gaze towards me. As I met his eyes, surprisingly, there was no fear of the boss in him. Instead, there was a hint of mockery in the depths of his eyes. Looking at his smug expression, it was as if he was saying to me, "Look, your wife is so forward in front of me." Sophia pushed her best friend away in one swoop. Her face flushed with alcohol and said, "You're talking nonsense. I don't have a fiancé at all. To tell you the truth, I never thought of being with Kevin. I don't love him at all. Getting to this point, it's because he is willing to give me money to spend, so I agreed to marry him. In the past, if I had heard such words, I believe I would have gone mad. But now, I find that my heart was not disturbed. In my heart, Sophia can no longer affect me. Maybe this is really the meaning of giving up." In her urgency, her best friend dashed bottled water on Sophia's face. "Wake up. Really, stop messing around. Don't forget, you are getting married next week." At this moment, Sophia seemed to sober up a bit. She turned her head and looked at me. Before I could question her, she preemptively broke the silence. Kevin, isn't this too much? Just because I hang out with friends doesn't mean you need to follow. Do you not trust me? As a top-notch businessman, why are you so petty? We are not even married yet, and you already keep such a close eye on me. If we really get married in the future, am I not even allowed to step out the door? After finishing her words, she smashed a beer bottle on the ground. The beer bottle shattered on impact, breaking instantly into countless pieces. This throw hit me deep in my heart. As the beer bottle shattered, so did my heart, irreparable. I had accepted the situation deep down, but I still tried to approach her. You are drunk. Let me take you home. Have you forgotten? You said you hate this kind of place the most. As I said this, I took her hand. Just as I turned around, a snap and a hard slap landed on my face. I only felt a buzz in my head, instinctively loosened my grip. Sophia pointed at my nose and scolded. Why do I get so upset whenever I see you? Why can't you give me a bit of freedom? Can't you stop stalking me? You're really like a country shepherd dog, sticking to me like glue, leaving me with no privacy. Sure, I won't stalk you anymore. I acquiesced. This slap woke me up a lot, and it also made me see the real her. The woman in front of me is not worthy of my wholehearted care. Perhaps it's time to put an end to this relationship, even though its ending is not perfect. At this time, David came forward pretending to mediate, but the joy in his eyes was even more intense. Mr. Wilson, don't take it personally with Sophia. She's drunk. Don't misunderstand it. What Sophia just said was all drunken nonsense. Don't believe it. As for me and her, really, there's nothing. It's just that the atmosphere just got to us. Surely you won't get angry over this. As they spoke, his words displayed a level of intimacy with her. I licked the corner of my mouth, gave a slight nod, and without uttering another word, I turned around and walked away. Just as I stepped out of the bar, David hurriedly followed behind. He rubbed his hands together and once again started to explain. Mr. Wilson, I still want to formally tell you that there is really nothing between Sophie and me. I glanced at him, replying indifferently. You don't have to tell me anything more. I know everything. My words were packed with hidden implications. Upon hearing them, David instead began to act unnaturally. I smirked coldly at him, continuing, Of course, I'm well aware that there's nothing going on between you two. With her current condition, I can't take her away tonight, but I have some work to do. You stay till the end. Look after Sophia for me. Thank you. Mr. Wilson, this puts me in a difficult position. It's not quite appropriate. Just a man and a woman alone, and in the middle of the night. I gave him a quick once-over, listening to him talk as if I had really misunderstood their situation. I immediately turned around and left, not bothering to glance back, and said, I expect you to do as I tell you. If you don't want to do it, you don't need to come to work anymore. After returning home, I felt no surge in emotion. My heart was as calm as water. I didn't ponder much about it and just saw it as if I watched a movie. I realized that I truly didn't care about anything anymore, even what had happened tonight. I had no desire to delve into it. Only the soreness on my face made me confirm that I indeed went to the bar tonight. These were all real. It was not until the next afternoon that Sophia returned home, completely exhausted. Seeing her, I remained silent. She sat down heavily on the couch, reeking of alcohol. I glanced at her, her shirt buttons were undone. I knew that she must have spent the whole night with David again. Go get me a cup of honey water. I have such a bad headache, she said weakly. She was used to ordering me around and I always complied. This habit made her feel naturally that I was supposed to serve her. But this time I refused. The honey is in the kitchen cabinet. Just fill the electric kettle with water and plug it in. You can do it yourself. The moment my words came out, Sophia seemed to be caught off guard. She froze for a few seconds before looking at me incredulously and said, Kevin Wilson, what do you mean by that? What now? Do you mean to say getting me a glass of water can kill you? If you're so great, use those skills outside the house. try and boost the company's performance. The audacity she had to mention the company's performance of all things. If not for her who had brought David into our company, resulting in such a mess by the sales team the company's performance wouldn't have deteriorated to such an extent. I hushed her with the sign of my hand and waved the book in my hand. Quiet. I'm reading. Let me ask you something. Do you remember me picking you up yesterday? She wanted to continue yelling, but perhaps feeling guilty. She swallowed her words and finished in a quiet voice. Ah, were you there yesterday? I forgot. I drank a bit too much yesterday. Seeing through her eyes, I was pretty sure she didn't get blackout drunk last night and remembers everything that happened in the bar. We've been together for a whole 5 years. I know her too well. She was playing amnesic on me, pretending to not recall the happenings of yesterday. I smiled and shook my head, not continuing this topic, but switched to another. The programming exam the day before the wedding, I told you about it earlier. I plan to review it properly in the next 2 days and participate in this exam. We initially planned to pick our wedding outfit today. You can go rest and help me choose one yourself. I will like whatever you choose. Upon hearing this, she was surprised. What? Aren't we agreed not to take this exam and wait for the next one? I nodded in response. That was the initial thought. But now I still want to take this exam first. Getting married is just a small episode in life. But if I pass this exam, this programming certificate will be with me for a lifetime. Even you might not be with me for a lifetime, but the programming certificate can. What do you mean by saying this? It's as if I have wronged you. What do you mean by just? We have been in love for 5 years and are about to get married. Can't you put aside what you have at hand and finish the wedding? Do you really not care about our wedding? This is a momentous life event. You once promised me. Why are you reneging now? Indeed, I had promised before to push aside all matters big and small, and focus all my attention on preparing for the wedding. But that was then, when I was filled with confidence about our relationship, hence I made those remarks. But now all those are completely unnecessary. The stakeholders of the company said that without this certificate, things would be inconvenient. Thus I must take this exam. I would rather not get married than skip the exam. The exam day doesn't conflict with the wedding day. If you feel the timing is too tight, we can postpone the wedding. If it's still a problem, we might as well call off the wedding, I said firmly. Since we fell in love, this was the first time I speak to her in such a superior manner. I have expected her to make a big fuss, as she usually does when I don't cater to her wishes. But this time she didn't quarrel with me. Instead, she just stared at me blankly. She knew why I changed. In the end, she compromised. This was the first time she conceded when we have disagreements. I was slightly taken aback. Aha, let's give David a day off so he can accompany you to choose. After all, you two get along well. Her face changed, and she exclaimed as if she was trying to escape. I'm stepping out for a bit to look at some dresses. I'll be back in the evening. With that, she dragged her tired body out of the house. I saw her this way for the first time, utterly disheveled and dejected, just like a drowned rat. In the past, I would never let her suffer any kind of wrong. Through the window, I saw her get into David's car. I carefully looked through these exercises. I studied them before, so picking them up again wasn't that hard. Unconsciously, the time had already turned to evening. I took off my glasses, turned on my computer, and planned to look for an online class. There was a point in my knowledge base that I still can't quite master. That's just how I am. I don't like dragging out any issues. Even if it's late, I need to resolve it. I clicked into YouTube, maybe because I hadn't used it for a while, it needed me to log in again. I didn't think too much of it, and went straight in to log into the default account. After logging in, I realized this account isn't mine but Sophia's. Just as I was about to log out and sign in again, I'm drawn in by the content in the account. Her account was packed with many photos and daily entries. The photos were densely populated. They're all of her and David. There were some from before and some were recently taken. Some of the photo locations were the Eiffel Tower in Paris, the Maldives. Most of the daily entries were her recording what she did on certain days, where she went. More often, they were about what she did with David, where they went. Until I flipped to her recent daily records. I'm about to get married, but I'm not happy. I don't even love him. I don't understand why I agreed to marry him. David, even after all these years, I still can't let you go. It was then I realized they were in contact all along, not just because David returned to the country. Turns out, I've always been a substitute in her eyes. She doesn't want to marry me either. If that's the case, I won't force her to do something she doesn't want to. I closed my laptop, wanting to have a smoke, only to find that there were no more cigarettes at home. This was because I had promised her to quit smoking, and since then, there hadn't been a single cigarette purchased in the house. It was not until 8 that night, when Sophia came home, her face much better than it was when she left. Behind her, David also stepped in. Sophia excitedly pulled out the wedding dress she'd bought and encouraged me to try it on. I politely declined though, giving the same reason as before: anything she buys, I like without having to try it on. David set out the purchased meals on the table. "Mr. Wilson, you haven't had dinner yet, right? These dishes were chosen by Sophie. You would find them all palatable." Listening to his comments, I felt extremely uncomfortable, as if they were the masters of the house and I was just a guest. There was mockery and provocation in David's words. It seemed like he wanted to tell me that, when he and I were together, Sophia would always choose him, not me. Indeed, that was how it was. The two of them were busy together, opening packaging bags, taking out each dish from the bags, and even going to the kitchen to get bowls and chopsticks together, all the while fooling around on the way. Me, however, I was left out to dry by the two of them like the ultimate outsider. I knew the little trick that David was playing. He aimed to provoke me in front of Sophia into losing my temper. Every time I got upset, Sophia would come forth to protect him and reprimand me. Over and over again, they never seemed to tire of this game. Because I used to love her, I fell for it nearly every time. But now I am awake. I will no longer be manipulated by these underhanded tactics. During mealtime, they would serve each other food from their own bowls, even feeding each other using their own chopsticks. Their actions were very affectionate, laughing and chatting happily. It seemed as if they were trying to show off to me that they had endless topics to discuss, and I was only worthy of being left out, listening to their narratives. Like flaunting the spoils of the day's shopping, they each took out their phones, opened their galleries, and started going through the photos. On closer inspection, all of the photos were of their wedding photo shoot. They were even discussing which photo looked better, which had bad lighting, or they really liked this photo and wanted to get it printed. Even if I could let go now, seeing that the two were actually provoking me openly, my heart at that moment had finally died completely. Seeing my face gradually turning dark, David started explaining. "Mr. Wilson, you mustn't overthink. The owner of the photo studio asked us to do this promotion. He said we were really a perfect match. These photos are just used as display samples in the photo studio." What he said was truly despicable. The wedding photos of him and my fiancée were hung in the photo studio for all to see, without ever considering my feelings. What would others think of me if they saw it? Moreover, the way he spoke suggested that if I got angry over this matter now, it would seem like I was being petty. Sophia immediately followed up. "Oh, this is not a big deal. There's no need for any misunderstandings. I originally asked you to go with me today, but you insisted on staying home and studying. When we were choosing clothes, the shop owner stopped us. He saw that we were made for each other and wanted us to help promote his photo studio, which isn't unreasonable. For this reason, he even gave us a 20% discount on the rental of these outfits. Besides, I originally wanted David to try on the clothes for you, since you two have similar builds. If you didn't want to go, what could I do?" In a few words, she shifted the issue back to me. Looking back over the years, I've long become accustomed to it. I forcibly suppressed the anger in my heart. They are no longer worth my aggravation. Therefore, I lost my appetite for dinner. I nibbled on a few bites of food before returning to my study to continue. I don't know how long it's been. I was abruptly interrupted by the sound of a door being pushed open. Sophia stood at the door of the study, her eyes brimming with tears as she looked at me. I asked, "Did he leave?" Her voice was soft, lacking its usual arrogant assertiveness. "It's not too early. Go freshen up. I'm going to rest. Tomorrow morning I might get up early, so I won't be sleeping in the bedroom. I don't want to disturb you." I rose from my seat, heading toward the exit from the study. As I approached the door, however, Sophia suddenly grabbed my wrist. "Kevin, I feel like your attitude for me have changed." I didn't respond, just quietly looking at her. Her tears quietly slid down her cheeks. In the past, whenever she cried, I would hurriedly fetch a tissue to wipe her tears. But this time I didn't move, just quietly watching her. "Is it because of that night?" I was somewhat at a loss and retorted, "What? That night at the bar?" Truth is, I remember everything that happened that day. I did all I did on purpose to upset you. I sneered back. "Do you also recall the part where you slapped me?" "Not just because of this incident, let me be straight with you. I don't want to get married anymore." With that said, I never looked back and headed for the restroom. She abruptly hugged me from behind. "So, because of this, you no longer care about me, right? You don't want to marry me, right? Why didn't you purposely come looking for me to make up during this Cold War, to close the distance between us? In the past, whenever I was close with David, you'd be terribly upset. But today, when I brought him in front of you intentionally, why did you not even show a slight change in your mood? So you actually remember how upset I would get when you two were together in the past. What have you taken me for?" I flared up, breaking free from her grip. "So, you've been toying with my feelings on purpose, haven't you? Why the hell am I the one who always has to take the initiative to approach you all the time? The problem is not me. It's you. I'm not just disappointed in you over one thing. Maybe what happened in the bar that night was just a catalyst. Our relationship has long since had problems. I'll say it again. I really don't want to get married." Having said that, I forcefully pulled my hand out of hers and went into the bathroom. Only I knew that when I found the abortion report, I still had love for Sophia, and perhaps I was not ready to let go yet. I dared not bring up breaking up because I was afraid she might actually agree, leaving no room for recovery. I thought that I might continue dragging it out with her, but I simply couldn't do it anymore. I was exhausted physically and mentally. I just wanted to end this relationship quickly. I really am too tired. When I noticed that Sophia could no longer stir my emotions, I realized that my love for her had completely disappeared, especially when I found out she'd been intentionally toying with my feelings. I still hadn't brought up the matter of the abortion report. I wanted her to have some dignity. I had no regrets, on the contrary, I felt a great sense of relief. The decision to break up wasn't made on impulse. It was the result of careful thought. If the love was no longer there was no need to stay together and let trivial matters keep me up all night. Once upon a time, I thought Sophia was the one for me in my life. I thought we would walk down the aisle, start a family, and live happily ever after. All these turned out to be nothing but illusions. I don't feel like I've wasted my 5 years of youth. I've gained a lot during this time. In love, I've loved, hated, felt lost, disappointed, heartbroken, and felt sweet fulfillment. In my career, there were times when I was so poor that I had to bear millions in loans, and even the pancakes on the street were unaffordable. When I was successful, I even discussed million-dollar business deals with various company bosses over dinner. Over the next 2 days, Sophia seemed like a different person. She even started to take domestic chores proactively, and her care for me rose several notches. For the first time in 5 years, I came to know that she indeed could take care of people. She started to cook on time every day, stopped mentioning hanging out with her girlfriends, and willingly stayed home to have dinner with me. I always thought Sophia couldn't cook after all. Since I've known her, she never cooked a meal once. Sometimes, as soon as I made this request, she would say impatiently, "My delicate hands are for work, not for laundry and cooking. I'm not your nanny. If you can't bear it, we can break up." Now I understand, Sophia's cooking isn't half bad. It's not that she can't cook, but that she's unwilling to cook for me. 2 days before the wedding, I found a lawyer and transferred all my cars, houses, and company shares into Sophia's name. That day she got drunk at the bar and explicitly said that she would marry me because I was willing to spend money for her. Now, I don't need her to marry me. Since she loves money, I'll give her all the property I've struggled to accumulate over the years.